The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to another Ask the Experts, where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Today is my first show. Is like the easiest show to do. This expert is so good at talking because he's had his own show for many, many years. And I just get mesmerized listening to him, and I just let him go at it. I'm so glad he's with us today. We're talking about tax relief. Not the greatest subject, but when you've got somebody who's so good, who can absolutely handle your problems, you know you got a good show. Let me welcome you to attorney Stephen Moskowitz.
Hello, Steve-O, and I love talking about taxes. It's great to talk about taxes because think of it like if I was a medical doctor and you're in pain and the doctor says, here, take this medication, it relieves the pain, and it's not addicting, and there's no side effects. I bet you'd want to take it and be happy to talk about it. The cure, I have the cure. And we need
I got to tell you something.
We have some news, hot news. I've been talking about this all over
but
the
I have
radio.
to tell you something first. I had two people who called me after your last show. Felt like they were cheated.
Well, they can give me a
compliment.
call at 888 Tax Deal and talk to me live and in person.
That's right.
There you go.
Okay, so
they
the
got
big
benefit.
news.
Look at that.
So the
bottom
news
line is the IRS, for the first time in 2 years, has started sending out the collection notices again. So they're chasing people down. And that makes sense because in the pandemic, they stopped sending the notices, they stopped chasing people. And they were pretty much closed up during the pandemic. Then when they came back, they had a mountain of things to deal with. Literally one of the mountains is they had a mountain of paper envelopes to open. That took them a while, just opening everything. Then they had other priorities. Then they hired all these IRS agents. And part of the job of a lot of them is to go chase people down. So that's what they're doing right now. But this doesn't have to be a problem. This is your way out. Because, with a lot of people, when they owe money, if somebody's not chasing them, say, just, let sleeping dogs lie. Well, the dogs are up and they're chasing people. And the bottom line is you don't want to go to either of the two extremes. One extreme is just stick your head in the sand. Don't do that because you don't want some IRS agent, especially all these new agents, ruining your life, your business, your marriage. And you do not want an IRS agent going to your customers and saying, don't pay you, give the money to the IRS. That will ruin your business. People won't want to know you. That can put you right out of business. On the other hand, you don't get the other extreme. Oh, I got a bill from the IRS. Well, they're the IRS. They must be right. Let me write that check. A lot of those bills are wrong. So the first thing we do is we determine, is this bill right or wrong? If it's wrong, we go to the IRS and say, hi, guys, your bill here is wrong. And instead of being X, it should be Y. Please correct it. And then we can talk about the rest if we need to. So that's one of the things we have to watch out for.
What percent are wrong, Stephen?
There's a large percent, a surprisingly large percent that are wrong. And let me give you one of the things that can go wrong. A common situation is when people owe taxes, they just don't file the return. That's wrong. They shouldn't do it, but they just do it anyway. They just don't file the return. And sometimes they don't file a return for years. I deal with those clients all the time. So there's two punishments for not filing a return. One, the IRS can put you in prison for 1 year for every year you don't file, up to 6 years. You don't want to know from that.
Wow.
Remember Wesley Snipes, the actor?
Yes.
Wesley was accused of tax evasion. He had a jury trial, and he beat it. The jury let him off. The lawyer did a good job. But he went to federal prison for 3 years anyway because he hadn't filed 3 returns. And judge says, okay, you didn't file 3 returns? 3 years in federal prison for you. So you don't want to go down that avenue. But on the civil side, where the government punishes people all the time, they do something called an SFR. What's SFR? SFR stands for substitute for return. That's where the government just makes something up. So one of the first things we do, that's wrong. They made something up, oftentimes way more than you really owe. What's an example? Suppose you sold the house for $1 million. It cost you $1.1 million. No tax on that. Or suppose it was your personal residence and you're under the $500,000 exemption. No tax for that. They don't bother with the deduction part. They say, oh, you made $1 million here. Well, the tax on $1 million is X, you owe X, and they send out a collector, go get it. That's wrong. Just like some of the SFRs are wrong. So we get those corrected. And there's a lot of good alternative. And there's so many things. For example, there's a lot of people that are in tax problem, not because of anything they did, because of their no good, rotten ex-spouse. Well, guess what? If the ex-spouse is the one that caused the tax problem, you might qualify for something called innocent spouse. And your problem just goes away. It's not your problem. Just like if your next door neighbor owes some taxes, it has nothing to do with you. That's what it is if you qualify for innocent spouse. Another thing you take a look at is offer and compromise. Offer and compromise is great. Sometimes you hear it called pennies on the dollar. And what happens with that one is that suppose you owe $1 zillion. You say, well, I don't have $1 zillion. You can go ahead and get out of that for a song if you otherwise qualify. And there's 3 different grounds for offer and compromise. The first one is something called doubt as to collectability, where you say, look, I know I owe you $1 million, but I don't have the income, I don't have the assets to pay you. How about if you let me off for just a fraction of that? And they can do that. It's called an offer and compromise. And do you have to have the cash for that much smaller amount? No. They would like it if you could make one lump sum. But you know what? They'll give you monthly payments even on that. Even on the reduced amount, they'll give you monthly payments. So the first one we take a look at are how much do you owe in tax? What are your income? What are your assets? What are your income? And there's other things they look at here too, and we'll see this comes in later and it's important. How old are you? If you're
Really?
35 and they look at you a lot differently than if you're 95. Because if you're 35 and healthy, you have a long time you could work and pay off those taxes. If you're 95, even if you are healthy, let's face it, let's take a look at the actuarial tables. Right. How much longer do you have, and what's the job market like for 95-year-olds nowadays? Not to mention, if you have some health challenges, the government might be happy to get anything out of this person while he's still alive. So we take a look at that. We take a look at the income and the assets.
What happens to that person, Stephen?
To which person?
The person who you said 90, and they're probably not going to be able to get a job. They probably have health issues.
Probably do.
What do they do with someone like that?
Well, sometimes what they do is a hardship deferral, where they just say, ain't got nothing out of you, just write them off. It's called a hardship deferral. Or maybe the 90-year-old's son would say, you know what, I'll give you a nickel on the dollar. And they say, well, you know what,
people are yelling at McDonald's.
You have a lot of people that say, look, maybe you got fired. Maybe your business closed. Maybe somebody's sick. You just don't have the money anymore. You used to, but you don't. There's a lot of times people have changes in circumstances. These could all be great candidates. So the first one is doubt as to collectability. You're just not going to get the money from it. That's one of the areas. Another area is doubt as to liability. So suppose Warren Buffett is watching this right now, and he says, Warren very much enjoys watching Steve-O, and Warren's a multi-billionaire, so he's not going to be able to use the first way. But Warren could use this way. This is, no, your bill is wrong. I want to contest it. So this offer and compromise doubt as to liability, saying, I could be a multi-billionaire. That doesn't matter. I don't owe you the money. And you know what? I deal with people from all walks of life. I deal with wealthy people. I deal with people that I don't know how they eat every day and everything in between. But there are a lot of wealthy people that I've represented. They won't pay an extra penny on something they don't owe. A lot of people say that's how they got wealthy. So the bottom line is you can use this gives you a stage to go on and say, look, I don't owe your taxable cost. And then there's a third ground, which is a compassionate ground. So let's assume you have this situation. You owe some taxes, and you have cash in the bank more than the amount of taxes you owe. Well, normally the IRS will say, well, wait a minute, you have more cash in the bank. This is a no-brainer. There's no way they give you an offer. Pay up or they'll come and take you. Say, well, wait a minute. Suppose you have a medical problem and you need that money for life-saving medicine that's not covered by your insurance. Or a close family member does, your spouse. Or your kid's a drug addict and you're spending beaucoup in some program. Or it's just unfair to collect these taxes. There actually is, there is a compassionate ground in the IRS. And this is an area. So the bottom line is we have three different ways we can qualify for this wonderful went ahead and deal with this. So you say, this is terrific because now, even though the government said I had all this money or owed all this money, there can be a real problem. And you take a look at it, because a lot of times people say, what's my forum? If I could a major problem that people have with dealing with the government is if somebody would just listen to you, hear your story, it'd be fine. But nobody's hear your story, and there's some automaton that says, pay or they're going to take it from you. So this can be a very good area. Now, a common problem that people have, and you see in the newspaper all the time, where people say, you know what? I called up the IRS. I was on the phone for a couple hours. Nobody answered. That's a common problem. The IRS, they admit that in the newspaper every year. So how do we get through to them? Well, what's the secret? I'll tell you the secret. Professionals and only professionals are given a separate set of numbers. We get through. That's it. But you say, well, fine. Well, what's the number? You can't use it if you're not a professional. Much like a physician can use a prescription pad and write a prescription for a controlled substance, but only a physician can do that. A non-physician can't. These numbers are only available for tax professionals.
Hey, Stephen, I want you
So-
to comment on something. I want you to comment on, I forgot his name. I think his initials were JB. And he said, we're going after people who make $400,000 a year or more. True or false?
Well, that's what was said. What was actually is it going to go after people who make more or less than 400 grand? We go after everybody. And what happens is there's an awful lot of regular middle-class people the government's chasing after them. And it's bad enough if you're a wage earner. If you are a business person, there is always somebody chasing after you, you know. And there's so many other associated things that we do because everybody knows it's for taxes, but we do associated things. For example, this year, the federal government, in their infinite wisdom, created a new law effective January 1st, 24, called the Corporate Transparency Act. Now what happens is you have to provide even more information to the government. And if you don't, they can put you in the pokey for 2 years.
Wow.
And the civil side is a penalty of $500 a day. $500 a day for not complying. So one of the things that we do is we offer to do this for clients. This is brand new for 2024. And while we're at it, a lot of people, small businesses, they're corporations, but they never bother with the corporate formalities. And so, well, so what? What if they don't? The one guy owns the whole corporation. If you don't, what are corporate formalities? Things like the annual meeting. So you mean I have to have a meeting with myself? What's going on there? Yes, you do. Because if the reason most people incorporate is for limited liability. So if you don't pay the corporate bills, your personal assets are still safe. But if you get sued, the first thing the enemy lawyer asks for is the corporate formalities. And if you haven't observed them, the lawyer says, Your Honor, they're not acting like a corporation. Let me at their personal assets. So we do that for people who associated things. It's like tax planning. In tax planning, there's so many things that we do for clients. And not only does it save you taxes, which of course is great, but it helps you control your business and make more profits. So there's all kinds of things. But back to our taxes, and we say there's so many things we can do here. We've talked about offering compromise. We just brushed on hardship deferral. Let's talk about that for another minute. Suppose you have a good job and you can pay your bills, and then one day you go home to your spouse and you say, honey, I refuse to work for any man who will say to me what my boss said to me today. And the wife says, well, what do you say to you? You're fired. And the bottom line is, what if you lose your job? What if your business goes south? What if somebody gets sick and you owe some taxes? Well, then what happens is you ask for something called a hardship deferral, where you basically say, look, I'm on hard times right now. Business is bad, or I lost my job, or the spouse is sick, or the kid has a drug problem. Leave me alone till I'm back on my feet. And then when I'm back on my feet, we'll do something. You can do that. And there's all kinds of variations on that. What if you're a commission salesperson and you're going to get a big commission 4 months from now, and I'll pay the taxes, but you don't have the money now? Let's make a deal. Or another thing is monthly payments. A lot of people don't have the money to pay their taxes. They agree they owe it, they just don't have it. That's okay. You can make monthly payments, just like you can make monthly payments to MasterCard. Only the government interest is way lower than the credit card companies. So there's all kinds of things that you can do. And then there's associated things. For example, maybe you want to get an SBA loan, Small Business Administration. They have very favorable loans, very favorable rates, and you can go ahead and run your business. Maybe you have some back taxes, pay them, and handle all of that. Then there's lots of other things we have to take a look at, like if you're in business, if you have people work for you, are they independent contractors or employees? Well, the bottom line here is the government's always looking for employees because they like that. There's withholding, there's payroll taxes. And some employers misclassify people, allegedly, and say, well, here, you're an independent contractor. I don't have to hold taxes for you. So the bottom line is these are all things that we can work out. And there's so many great programs. Suppose you've done this. You've been naughty. You have a whole bunch of people working for you that you've classified as independent contractors, but they're really employees. The government finds that out. You're going to get an enormous bill. Guess what? There's a voluntary disclosure program. You go to the government and say, okay, look, you know what? I want to make things right. From today on, I'm going to treat all these people like employees. But you know, all those years past that I did all that stuff I wasn't supposed to, all's forgiven. They let you off the hook. Just think about it. And there's so that applies to so many companies. Now, for those of you that are watching and say, that's a great program. When they catch me, I'll apply for it. Won't work then. The whole idea of that program and other programs is you have to come forward before the government comes to you. If the government decides to do an audit or they come to you, too late, you're going to get hit for a lot of money. And the crying shame is the government legally lets you get away with it by saying, okay, do the right thing from today forward and all is forgiven for the past.
Wow. Stephen, I could do this for hours with you.
So could I. That's why I slowed up, because I see the clock on the wall is getting ready to say,
tell people how they can reach you.
Call us toll free at 888-TAX-DEAL. That's 888-TAX-DEAL. 888-TAX-DEAL. Or visit us online, MoskowitzLLP.com. Moskowitz LLP.com. And I head our firm. We're a medium-sized law firm. We have attorneys, CPAs, and other professionals. And I'm not some guy that just appears on shows. I actually talk to an awful lot of people that call. So not everybody, but if those of you want to speak to me, there's a good chance that I'll be the one to say, hi, what's going on, and chatting.
Bro, I love you. You are the best. Stephen will be back again with us next month with more Ask the Experts. I'll see you soon, my friend.
Look forward to it. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you. That's attorney Stephen Moskowitz. We're going to take a short break. We come back. Oh, my God. We've got, I'm going to say, the greatest dentist in the city of Houston. If you're thinking about dental implants or cosmetic dentistry, just teeth whitening, you don't want to miss the next show. We'll be right back with our expert.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
And we are back. I was just telling you that I love doing this show. And I think the reason I love doing this show is, hey, we've all been to the dentist before. And they all have their own personalities. But our next expert, Dr. John Van Slate, wait till you hear how he explains everything. Now I'm really going to put him on the spot, but you can really tell he enjoys what he does. He's been in practice for a long time. I always look so forward to his show every month. Let me introduce you to our expert, Dr. John Van Slate.
Steve-O, how are you doing?
How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulously. I'm having a great day. Hope you are as well.
Dr. Van Slate, do you ever have a bad day?
Very rarely.
Yes.
Very rarely.
Life is good. Well, we're going to talk about bleaching today, and there's got to be a lot of different areas of cosmetic dentistry, especially
Sure.
with porcelain veneers. But first of all, tell everybody about your practice.
Well, my practice is kind of west of the Gallery in Houston. I've been here for, oh gosh, around 30 years. And my practice itself, I'm a general dentist, and I do a lot of cosmetic dentistry, of course. And we do everything from restoring implants to lots of sleep apnea, lots of TMJ. Those are things that are passionate for me. And yeah, just really enjoy doing what I'm doing.
You know, I've brought this up on one of our shows before, but I keep reading that Medicare is going to start paying for implants. Did I read that wrong?
You know what? I will tell you this, Steve. I hear so many changes in the insurance game. It changes literally monthly. So I've heard the same thing. And so certainly we hope for everybody that insurance start covering more things and do things more for their patient, for the patients. But, until it happens, I don't want to be skeptical, but we'll just have to wait and see, right? Just like anything else.
Listen, I think that would be wonderful because, I mean, a lot of people are on a fixed income who are older. And listen, it is really bad when you're missing teeth. And from the friends of mine I've spoken to who've had teeth replaced, it just changed their whole personality.
Oh, it'll change your life. Yeah, no doubt about it.
And the same way just with cosmetic dentistry.
Sure. For me, that has become one of my biggest passions, because you can take somebody who's afraid to smile or doesn't want to smile, and all of a sudden they're smiling. You literally change your life. It's the most gratifying thing that I do in dentistry. I love it. And to this day, it's still one of my favorite things to do.
So let me start off with bleaching. What is the best way to bleach their teeth?
Well, that's such a good question, because right now the market is just bombarded with all sorts of over-the-counter bleaching systems and things like that. And really what it comes down to, a lot of those systems still contain the peroxide base and use LED lights, even like we do in the dental office. But the key that you get is in the dental offices, we're just using a higher concentration. So it's really a factor of time, because we can get 6 to 8 shade difference in as little as an hour, as opposed to, sometimes several weeks with those home kits. And really, that's the big deal. It's just a matter of if time is a big factor for you, then we still are the place to go to get that. And I would say that reasonably in a dental office, you can expect 6 to 8 differences in shades just in a simple 1-hour treatment in a dental office. And yeah, we're using things like Zoom and opalescence and Core. Those are all really, really great bleaching systems. And but I will tell you this, Steve, the key to bleaching that you have to know about is that you can't just bleach your teeth one time, expect it to last a lifetime. The people in my practice that have the whitest teeth, that keep that big, vibrant, white smile, they touch up bleach every 6 months or so. And the great thing about the concentration of the bleach that we use is it only takes about 15 minutes a day to do that. And you only have to do it maybe every 6 months for 3 or 4 days. And that's the reason why when people come to us, we make bleaching trays where they can, at home, do the maintenance to make sure that they can keep their teeth whiter. But that's it. Lots of interesting changes with the concentrations of the bleaching that have come out.
John, I'm sure there's foods out there that can stain teeth. What are some of those foods that people need to be aware of?
Well, this is exactly why you need to touch up, because our Western diets, we do eat a lot of things and drink a lot of things that are just naturally going to stain teeth. Things like red wine. People love to drink their wine. Black coffee, dark fruit juices like grape juice, dark teas. Smokers are always going to have more of an issue with staining. And so anything that can stain a white t-shirt basically is going to stain your teeth. And another thing that people have to really realize is that when somebody has a lot of dark or silver fillings in their mouth, especially on the lower teeth, just changing the silver fillings and putting white fillings in can just really enhance a person's smile just doing that alone. So yeah, lots of things can cause teeth to darken.
John, this is probably going to sound really strange, but I have a lot of friends of mine here in Florida that do get their teeth whitened, but some of them are so white, they look fake.
Yeah.
How do you regulate the color?
Well, I will tell you this. The great thing with bleaching is that because you can apply it as needed, however you want it. So you're looking at your smile every day in the mirror. If you feel like your teeth are too white or not white enough, you can just not bleach anymore, right? You just stop the bleach, and that'll
Right.
help. Once you're happy with the way that you look, you're at liberty then to make a decision whether or not you want to continue bleaching or not. So it kind of puts it in the patient's hands a little bit to bleach as much as they need to.
You just mentioned foods that stain teeth more. I've noticed red wine does that. Of course,
Yeah.
smoking does that. What is the hardest stain to get out?
Well, I tell
Is
you
it
what, bar none.
smoking or
Yeah. Well, I think we call them intrinsic stains, like tetracycline stains, what makes a gray, deep, it penetrates deep in the tooth. So any of those really deep gray stains are always the hardest to get out. Now we have ways that'll do that, but it's just a harder bleaching application that has to be applied to do those.
now when they come to your office for the teeth whitening, how long does the procedure last?
The typical bleaching system is about an hour to an hour and a half in our practice.
Wow.
And yeah, and we take impressions to make trays. We usually make trays for their touch-ups at home, and we give those to the patients the day that they're here. But generally, you can expect a good hour in the chair, and we go through cycles that we usually run like 15-minute cycles, and we make sure that sensitivity-wise are doing good, and we have ways to help with sensitivity. But that's about what it takes.
Now, can bleaching harm your teeth in any way?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that, because I get asked that quite a bit. And what I will
I
tell
bet
you is
you
I've been
people
doing
wonder.
bleaching for 25 years, Steve. I've never had anybody that's had irreversible damage caused from bleaching, or else we wouldn't do it, right? I wouldn't want to do anything that would cause that kind of problem to the teeth. But just in general, sensitivity is bar none the biggest obstacle we have. And if your teeth are real sensitive to hot and cold things, just in general, or if you got a lot of gum recession, then you're probably going to have more sensitivity to the bleach than someone who doesn't have a lot of sensitivity on their teeth. So if that's the case, we have bleaching gels now that are called relief gels that you can place in the tray and put them on after bleaching, and it usually does a great job at soothing the sensitivity almost on the spot. It really isn't much of a factor for us anymore. So it's nothing to be worried about.
I know you're going to be a little humble about this, but you are actually considered one of the top cosmetic dentists in Texas. And
Thank you.
everything that I know about you, you do some of the most amazing cosmetic dentistry. What do you attribute your reputation? I know you've been in practice for 30 years?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you this. I mean, number one, I've done a lot of it. You can see, I've been in it long enough where I've done hundreds of cosmetic cases, and so yeah, that's one thing that I can say. I've made mistakes, and I've had a lot of positives. So it takes both. But just in general, I would tell you that I have to give props to the Las Vegas Dental Institute for a lot of my foundation. This is a cosmetic institute that teaches. I mean, it's even bigger than cosmetics, but I have learned at the Las Vegas Institute from some of the most accomplished, some of the best dentists in the world there. And matter of fact, most of the principles that we're using in cosmetic dentistry were even founded at this institute. So I've been lucky enough to go out there. I've been going regularly for 20 years. And I mean, I learned the latest techniques. I heard about all the improvements in the porcelains and the way we bond teeth now that just, it's invaluable. But so I for me, that's really what it's all about. And it's about changing lives to me. So I have fun with what I'm doing.
John, tell me, what's some of the new things that are coming out?
Well, I will tell you this, Steve, and I'll get into that. But as far as veneers and things like that, I will tell you that still the best way to make your teeth look the best way to make them look ideal is still what's called the porcelain veneer. And I've got a porcelain veneer here that you can see. Let's see if I can hold it up. It's a very thin. Well, I can't really show you too well, but it's 0.5 millimeter thickness of porcelain that you basically bond to the front of the tooth. With that porcelain, you can close gaps, you can solve rotation problems, color problems, everything is done. And they're so durable. I mean, they look as good 15 years later as the day you put them on because they don't stain. It's a phenomenal restoration, and it's still the best. I still feel like even though you can put a crown on and you can do dental bonding and have great results, bonding discolors and it wears down in time. Crowns are the veneer is so much more conservative than a crown. It's really still unsurpassed in what it can do. But as far as durability, color stability, it is still the absolute best way to fix your teeth, and we do a ton of it. And nothing does the job that a porcelain veneer will do, even to this day. And it's got a good, probably 25, 30-year track history now, and it just never ceases to amaze me the beauty that we can get from porcelain veneers.
We just got a text from a listener and really enjoying today's show. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask Dr. John. Now you're Dr. John.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask Dr. John, how long does it take from start to finish to have implants put in?
Okay, so that's an implant question. Well, I will tell you this. There's a variation to that, okay? The typical implant, when you place it, you have to allow time for that implant to integrate in bone. It's got to lock into that bone before you put any kind of load on it, right? So for a single implant, the typical amount of time is going to be, probably 3 to 4 months before you can put a crown on it, okay? Now, we've heard about all on 4. We've heard a lot about dentistry in a day, right? Well, what that typically is, that's going to be for a full denture where somebody might get 4 to 6 implants placed strategically at certain angles that then allow us to have what's called cross arch stabilization, where the denture or the teeth can snap in immediately. And that is, so there's a difference in the techniques. But typically, if you're looking at one implant, maybe a few implants, you can expect 4 months or so, 3 to 4 months for healing before you do anything to them. But on these more complex full arch dentistry, where you're putting an all on 4 type of situation, then those can be done, teeth in a day can be done. So that's the difference.
Their follow-up is, how long do they last?
Which ones? You talking about veneers, or you're talking about the implants? Well, I tell you what, implants, the great thing about an implant is they can last a lifetime, Steve. I mean, that is the beauty of the dental implant. There's nothing else in dentistry that's going to simulate, function like, and look like a natural tooth more than a dental implant. I mean, literally, that's what's the calling card of the implants, is you can place an implant, and if you take great care of your mouth, man, they can last a lifetime. So, yeah, there's nothing else like a dental implant for that.
Getting back to the porcelain veneers,
Sure.
Do you need to adjust the natural teeth a lot to place the veneers?
Well, you know what? I will tell you this, Steve. Always when we're doing veneers, the key is to be as conservative as possible, right? I mean, you've got to be conservative. So I always try to reduce the least amount of tooth possible, and there's a couple of ways to do that. Every time I do a veneer case, I do what's called a wax up. And from this wax up, I can simulate exactly how the veneers are going to look. And I work with a lab that a great master technician that knows how to do this as well. But we do a wax up. From that wax up, I can make guides or templates that I can lay over the teeth that will show me exactly where and how much tooth needs to be reduced. But this is what I'll say. When we're fixing teeth, we're fixing rotations, we're fixing gaps. And a lot of times to fix that, you're going to have to adjust the teeth. So I would never expect anybody to think that they're not going to have their teeth adjusted, because that is part of the veneer process. You're going to expect some adjusting to the teeth. But I would never. When
John,
I
what
take,
does that
all right,
mean?
just think. All right, think of this. The veneer is about a 0.5 millimeter thick, right? So what I try to do is you're gonna have to reduce the tooth about a 0.5 millimeter, Steve, so that that veneer kind of inlays into the tooth. Because the worst thing you can do to a tooth is make it look bulky, right? So if you just add
Yeah.
porcelain to the front of the tooth and don't reduce it, you might have a situation where it looks too bulky, or it might have margins like the edges around the veneer that stain or look unsightly. Veneer should not do that. You want a veneer to look as natural and as beautiful as possible. And that often requires us to do some adjusting to the tooth. So people have got to know that going in. But again, I would never sacrifice a beautiful cosmetic case for a no prep design, because if it looks bad, you're not going to be happy with it.
John, there's really an art to what you do.
Oh my gosh. And I'll tell you what's even crazier, Steve. You know, the beauty of a veneer is this. When you talk about a beautiful smile, of course, we know about rotations, we know about gaps and things like that, but it's proportional. The width of your tooth is proportional to the length every time. When we consider beauty, like even in architecture, but a beautiful face is proportional, which means, you know, have you heard of pi 1.618? That's the number pi. Everything that is proportional to pi is what we consider beautiful. Now, what does that mean? That means that the lateral, this tooth right here, is 1 to 1.618 of the central. And I'll tell you what, this little gauge that I use right here, when I look at beauty, from between my eyes to the edge of my teeth is 1.618, to my chin is 1. That would be considered proportional. Well, we're doing the same thing to the teeth, Steve. We need to have proportional teeth. And for that reason, the gums frame the teeth. So I use lasers all the time to build symmetry into the gum tissue and build those perfect proportions so that our teeth look the ideal size and shape. That is critical to a veneer case. If I know that I can do a wax up and I have the proportions right, I know going into that case that person is going to love their teeth and they're going to look ideal, literally 100% of the time. When I have to fudge on those proportions is when I have to have conversation with the patients about, can I, is the tooth going to look too bulky? Is it going to look too wide or too thin? Those are conversations that I'll have based on those wax ups. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
I want to, John, I want to get this text in. This is a viewer. He said, I'm watching this show, such an interesting show. I am getting ready to possibly do implants, another implant. But what I want to know is, how do you build up bone in the gums?
Well, it's grafting. Okay. If you have a loss of bone, then you've got to make that bone up somehow. Okay. And there's grafting procedures that we do, all sorts of grafts. I mean, it can be cadaver bone. We can use a person's own bone to build up the bite or build up the bone that's been lost. But the bottom line is you have to have a certain amount of bone for the implant to be placed, right? So you have to make sure that to have available bone, sometimes you have to graft bone to those areas to make sure you have enough bone for the implants. And those are typically planned out before the implants are placed. And it could involve a separate procedure than the implant altogether. A lot of times you have to build the bone up, let the bone heal, and then place the implants a few months later. But that's critical for implants.
Another text just came in. If I'm missing a tooth, do the teeth that surround the missing area start growing in? Does that make sense?
Okay.
I guess they wants to know, what do those teeth do that are on both sides of the missing tooth?
Okay. Teeth won't just grow back, Steve. I mean, if you're missing a tooth, you're missing a tooth, right? So you would never expect a tooth to grow in where you're missing a tooth. That's what the implant does. It simulates the missing tooth, right? It simulates the root so that you can place a crown on it and make it look like the natural tooth. But when you're missing a tooth, you have to do something to replace that tooth. Whether it's an implant, you can do a bridge, you can do a partial. These are all things that we do in dentistry to add teeth where people are missing them.
I saw a commercial the other night. I forgot what it's called. It's a very famous procedure that you do. It kind of takes the place of when your teeth are far apart. Orthodontics.
Oh, yeah. Invisalign. You're probably talking about Invisalign.
Invisalign, that's it.
Yeah.
What do you think of Invisalign?
We are doing Invisalign all the time now. I love Invisalign. I mean, Invisalign, and I can show you those right here. Invisalign is just, they're trays that look like this, Steve. And what we do is we use a digital scanner it's like a video camera that we scan of the teeth. And then we can upload those images into a software that basically tells us how many aligners is it going to take to create a correction. So let's say somebody has some crooked teeth, and it's going to take us, the software says it'll take us 20 aligners to fix that. Well, somebody will get 20 of these aligners that look like this, and each one of them has a correction, and you wear them successive weeks. You got to wear these things. You got to be great at wearing them. Pretty much 24/7.
All day or while you sleep?
Well, you can take them out to eat food, but you really need to wear them at least 22 hours a day to get ideal results. Okay. But the great thing is they're called Invisalign because they're really invisible. I mean, we can put them in, and a lot of times people do. I guarantee you got friends that you don't even know that have Invisalign, and that's the beauty of the Invisalign. You know, adults love them because, my gosh, they don't have to go back into these silver braces that they had when they were kids. You know, and it really does a phenomenal job of moving teeth. And I use it a lot, even in cosmetics, because if I have somebody that's got a lot of crowding, I can put them Invisalign to 6 to 8 months, create room that I can then build perfect proportions on my porcelain. So I'm using it a lot, even in cosmetic cases, not just to move teeth, but when I'm trying to even use it for veneers, I might put them in Invisalign first. And it really it's been a game changer for me because I can do things that I've never been able to do without Invisalign.
That's a great.
So it's pretty awesome.
John, you know what the best part about our show is? The best part of our show is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 text messages from listeners saying what a great show is. That's when you know you got a great show.
Yeah.
Tell people how they can make an appointment with you.
Well, you can certainly call us at 281-886-3164, and that's how you can reach us.
And you have a website, John? I know you do.
Yeah, drvanslate.com. So it's VANSLATE.com.
Your show always goes by so fast. Dr. Van Slate will be back with us again next month, and I can't thank you enough. The way you explain things, I wish I lived in Houston. I do.
Well, I'll tell you what, Steve, we didn't even have time to get into some new things that are going on in dentistry that I think you'd be just fascinated with.
We got to do that the next show.
We'll do that next time because there's some things going on in dentistry that'll blow your mind. That's awesome.
Okay, so we teased everybody. Don't join us next month. Thanks a lot, John.
All right, Steve. Have a great day, okay?
You too, buddy. That's Dr. Van Slate. God, I love him. He is so good. I got to tell you, if you've got to have any dental work done, you want Dr. Van Slate. That's it for us today. We'll be back with you again next week with more Ask the Experts. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Rebel. We'll see you all next week.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.